Look at a bit of news. So Cellebrite is the most famous tool to hack into phones. They sell only to law enforcement and governments. I met the CEO of Cellebrite when I went to teach classes in Sri Lanka, and he told me at that time they could hack into every Android phone and every iPhone and get right past your password, which is the long shoot. But anyway, the problem is since they do sell to law enforcement agencies and governments, those governments often do nasty things. And the activists at Citizen Lab, a privacy group, are always mad at them. They say the Kenyan government used it against a Kenyan activist. This is what most governments do. They research rival political figures and journalists and such. And unfortunately, they used to make a big deal out of only selling to NATO members and only selling to places that would use it morally. But I think right now it's very clear that the Trump administration will do the same thing right here. So I don't know who they could sell it to now. I guess just Europe if they wanted to avoid this kind of invasion of human rights. But anyway, now they're being blackened by selling to thing being used to jail a political activist who didn't really do anything wrong. It's tough when you get anywhere near politics. You end up in these terrible positions where you either have to limit your companies or you have to accept letting your customers do bad things with your product. So there's an AI-powered private school. This is one of the promises of AI from several years ago, is that every student would have an AI assistant that would be personalized to you, and they wouldn't need any more teachers. Everything would be done by AI. So that's what this alpha school is doing, and apparently it's pretty terrible. They say it costs a lot of money, which is kind of crazy because I thought the whole point of it was to save money. And they say it has what I would expect. It presents students with stupid questions that don't make any sense where there's no right answer because AI makes a lot of mistakes. They say 10% of the time it makes hallucination and terrible mistakes. And I agree, that's bad. At that point, the students just get frustrated and they're miserable. So anyway, they talk about what they promised here and how so far it's not achieving what they promised, which is, I guess, not too surprising. I remember this sounded pretty good to me about 2-3 years ago when they started talking about these personalized lessons. And at advanced level, like where I'm teaching, one of the guys said, I always tell my students to open ChatGPT in the corner of your screen and have it available all the time. Any technical term you don't like, ask ChatGPT to explain it. And I think that's true. I just use Google because it's easier. But that's true. 90% of the time or 80% of the time, you'll get a good explanation of any technical term. So it's useful for that. But replacing the teacher entirely, especially creating the lessons and the quizzes, is what I don't think it's good at. ChatGPT, I would think, would be pretty good at making a quiz where it asks you to fill in the blank and just repeats a sentence from the input. But the thing it's never going to have, I think, is to understand what the most important points are and put those on the quiz. For that's what I always try to do in quizzes, and I don't think it's remotely ready for that. So GPS is under attack. It's been this way quite a bit. Russia is attacking GPS all the time, and apparently somebody has done it twice in the United States. It appears to have been a U.S. military test, but nobody's admitted who did it. A couple of times they had zones around an airport where GPS is out, and the problem is autopilot, and a lot of GPS airplane instrumentation depends on GPS. So it's not but the fact is, I remember seeing hackers 10 years ago demonstrate GPS attacks at DEF CON. The problem is GPS has no authentication, no encryption. It's just a very weak radio signal from a satellite. It's very easy to use a ground-based radio to broadcast a stronger signal and trick GPS into leading you the wrong way. And that's been happening more and more. More and more enemy nations are doing it. So here's a guy that used to be, Michael Rogers used to be head of Cyber Command, saying we really need to replace GPS. And he says, I've heard a few different proposals. I saw they had in beta testing a device which used a very sensitive quantum device to measure the acceleration of your plane. So it would just track it by the motion of the plane itself. That's one way to go. What he says is you replace it with something that uses 5G signals, 5G telephone signals to locate you. Anyway, he's certainly right that we need to do something because the current GPS signals that we're all trusting are extremely easy to override and defeat, and we really shouldn't trust them so much for anything really important like missiles or planes. So this is pretty important. Now, Anthropic, OpenAI originally said the purpose of their company was to make responsible, kind AI that wouldn't hurt anybody, and they were not going to be for profit. They immediately abandoned that and just collecting tons of money because they found it was going to be really expensive to make AI. So they switched to just an average Silicon Valley company that's all about making more and more and more money, regardless of everything. Anthropic was rebels from OpenAI that formed it, from Amazon, and they are very proud of saying they're going to be moral, they're going to be the good guys. And so now the Pentagon, for some reason, has standardized on Anthropic as the AI for the military. But Anthropic's terms of service say you cannot use it for weapons, and you cannot use it to surveil the citizen population. And the Pentagon says, no, we want the freedom to do both of those things, especially surveilling the civilian population, which they're now doing to a large extent. So they're thinking not only are they going to cancel the contract with Anthropic and move to another AI, probably Grok, because Grok is the one Elon Musk is totally on board with all the government's plans, but now they're going to punish Anthropic by declaring declaring that they're an untrustworthy company or something like that. I forgot, Jerry. Supply chain risk, which would mean nobody can use them if they're going to sell any products to the U.S. military. Like that's what they did to Huawei in China. Nobody can have Chinese. That's what they did to TikTok. I can't have TikTok on my phone because I work for a critical infrastructure provider, not even directly to government or the military. But you can't work in anybody that has any kind of contact with the government and military if you have a company that's on this bad list. So we'll see. That's pretty harsh. So Anthropic now faces another one of those hard decisions. They either have to lose a ton of money and let somebody else pull ahead, or they have to compromise their values and let the military do whatever they want with their AI, which is the kind of thing everybody faces. Google faced a very similar decision when they tried to expand into China. At first, they wouldn't go into China because if you go into China, you have to obey Chinese censorship rules. Then they finally agreed to do that and made a censored version of Google, and then China betrayed them by hacking Google. They were very personally offended by that. They felt like they'd already made terrible sacrifices to get in China, and then China betrayed them, so they went public and exposed the extent of Chinese hacking, which changed the world. That created the modern world of instant response and cybersecurity. Everybody realized that all the defenses were useless, and we had to greatly increase our cybersecurity defenses to stop these powerful attacks. So it was a big deal, changed the world of cybersecurity, and we'll see what comes out of this. But this may have a big effect on the relative importance of the AI companies. The one thing that I'm hearing from all corners in the last week or so is OpenAI is going down. OpenAI is failing. The people are abandoning the company. It really looks like they can't possibly justify their expenses, and they don't have a good enough product. And it looks like they're going to sink first. It looks like Anthropic and Grok and there's another big one that can't come to mind right away. Oh, Google Gemini may fall before. Which, by the way, there's some justice in that. Google invented all the modern AI technology. They wrote a paper in, I think, 2017 was Attention is All You Need. They deduced the basic scientific finding that makes it possible to make large language models, and then they didn't release any product because they saw how defective it was. They had a lot of mistakes. And then OpenAI rushed with a competing product to market, and that forced Google to release their product, which wasn't really ready. And we have the current generation of large language models, which are not very good. They make mistakes like 10 or 20% of the time, and pretty bad mistakes. So arguably, Google is correct that they should not have rolled them out in this condition. They should have continued to develop them, but they didn't. And anyway, looks like Google may be, in the longer run, a winner, surviving the AI contest. Anyway, that's enough news for the moment.